Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars. Hello there! This is Dave, and you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You? The show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars, from industry insiders to indie artists, from mega collectors to obsessive mythologists, to find out how Star Wars impacted their life. Here's the thing, there's a lot of ways to look at Star Wars, and it's all from a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. And let's face it, we all love what we all love about Star Wars, and I believe that hearing someone talk passionately about what they love could open your own mind to, well, new points of views. Also, it's just fun to talk Star Wars. So I want to change the conversation from what is right or wrong about Star Wars to what does Star Wars mean to you? Today, it's episode 16 and my conversation with writer and showrunner Trey Callaway. Not only is Trey a fan of Star Wars, but he also wrote the trailer for the 1997 re-release of the movies, including the tagline, "See it again for the first time." Now, I remember when that trailer came out and the excitement behind seeing Star Wars in the theaters again. And that was back in 1997 for the 20th anniversary of Star Wars. 1997, which was what, like more than 25 years ago today. I mean, we've flown by the 20th anniversary of the special edition re-releases, not to mention the 40th anniversary and coming up on the 50th of the original Star Wars. And it just shocked me. And I'm talking to people from all walks of life, from all ages, from all kinds of fan bases, whether they're mostly fans of the OT or fans of the prequel trilogy or fans of the Clone Wars or of the TV shows. There's still this power of Star Wars that has lasted from year to year to year. Here's the thing, to put all of that into context. If it were 1984, it would be like something coming out in the 1930s still being massive in 1984. I mean, it would be kind of like if you took Wizard of Oz and over the next 45 years made 11 more movies, hundreds of hours of TV, thousands of pages of books, countless comic books, all of it based on or spin-offs of Wizard of Oz. You know, the Scarecrow would have his own movies, and Tin Man would have his own series. The Cowardly Lion would have cameos. Dorothy would have grown old and passed along the ruby slippers to someone else. We would have completely explored the Munchkin Society and how it works, possibly 3 seasons on the Lollipop Guild alone, about the workers behind it and how they formed. And all of this is not a criticism. It's just to put it all in perspective and show the massive scale that Star Wars has attained. But now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of really want a series about the Lollipop Guild and how it came to be and who runs it and who elected these people and was there any betrayals? Did guild members fight over the size and taste of the lollipops? Were any guild members buried underneath the yellow brick road? I digress. My point is that Star Wars is massive. So let me ask you this. Is it too massive to create new fans? Is there too much history for someone to just jump in now? And would you watch a show called The Guild, all about the political intrigue within Munchkin Society? Let me know and get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, moving on. For context, this was all recorded in late March before the start of the writer's strike. And I certainly hope the writers get their demands and the piece of the pie that they've earned. Now, if you don't want to miss guests like this, hit the subscribe button. If you're liking the show, please give a 5-star rating and review. Now, let's find out, what does Star Wars mean to Trey Callaway? My guest today is a film and TV writer, a producer and a showrunner who creates content as if he's running out of time. His vast list of credits includes shows like 911 Lone Star, CSI New York, Supernatural, for which he created the recurring characters, the Ghostfacers, and many, many more shows. He wrote the screenplay, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and has worked with such talents as Tim Burton, Ron Howard, and Harrison Ford, which I'm going to ask about him in shortly. This former on-air radio personality, now, along with his work in Hollywood, is a professor at the USC School of Cinematic Arts at the University of Southern California. Please give a warm why hello there to Trey Callaway.
Why hello there to you, Dave.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Trey. My first question to you, as to all my guests, are you ready to tell the world what Star Wars means to you?
I mean, I think that's what I signed up for, right?
Right.
But yes, even if I weren't a privileged guest on your podcast, I would be more than ready to tell you or anybody else what Star Wars means to me.
If we were at the Starbucks and just ran into each other and I said, hey, what does Star Wars mean to you? I think we'd sit down for an hour and a half anyway.
There's no question in my mind that is true.
So I like to start with a thing I call 5 with the Force. So this is 5 questions I ask all my guests. It just kind of gives a simple baseline to your relationship to Star Wars.
Okay.
So number 1, which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. It's a common answer for men our age.
I think that's probably true.
Oh, I have to roll a D6 to determine the question.
Oh, a D6.
4. What is your favorite Star Wars droid?
Oh, well, look, I would say C-3PO. Although having just been at Disneyland a few days ago and on the Rise of the Resistance ride, I was reminded all over again of how much I love BB-8. But yes. C-3PO would be my go-to.
Is there any particular characteristic or a reason why it's C-3PO?
You know, human in his insecurities, and also, although I tend to favor silver as an adult, as a kid, I was into his tarnished gold appearance.
What is your favorite line to quote?
Oh my gosh. These are not the droids you're looking for. Move along.
Is that something you use in everyday conversation?
I actually do. I quite a bit, and I've learned a fair amount. I'm a big fan of magic and also the art of the Carnival Con, the sort of rich history of the Carnival Con, and because of that, I've done a fair amount of research into neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, which is basically a fancy clinical term that you could apply to a line like, "These are not the droids you're looking for." Move along.
Well, I feel like maybe you pulled the long con on me to get on the show.
No. Although there is certainly carnival work that applies on a daily basis to anyone with a career in Hollywood. For me, it's more about a love for the history of magic.
Can you do any Star Wars impressions or impersonations?
Oh my. I mean, no, I mean, I don't think so.
Really?
I probably in my mind, sure. Oh yeah, I do one.
Yeah.
For years, I would do my best, with apologies to him if he's listening. I would do my best Mark Hamill in the trash compactor. 3PO! Oh, shut up. And I'm sure that's terrible for sound. And I apologize to all your listeners right now who've just grabbed for the volume knob. But yes, that would be one that I've done over the years.
That's a fun one. That's a good one. It's pull out at parties. People are be like, wait, what's happening here?
Yeah, surefire way to never be invited back.
Yeah. How Not to Work in Hollywood by Trey Callaway.
Exactly. Oh, I could write a book there.
Besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be video games, the toys, TV show, comic books, just anything, RPG.
Well, look, I had a love, still have a love for the old Kenner toys, but I would have to say my favorite now, without question, is the Star Wars land at Disneyland, which is the first time I've ever been able to experience being immersed in that world on a scale that is so convincing and so classically, beautifully Disney. I mean, it's the Imagineers, who are always among my favorite people, deserve, every award imaginable for that endeavor, because it's, for a Star Wars fan, I think for anyone, but certainly for a Star Wars fan, to be able to walk into that world, there's nothing like it.
So, and you mentioned that you were just on Rise of the Resistance. Was that at Disneyland?
Yeah, that's one of two major rides within the Star Wars land, the other being Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, which is also a lot of fun. But Rise of the Resistance is, for my money, the greatest attraction in any of the Disney parks.
When they announced Star Wars Land, were you anticipating it? Were you one of the first to get down there? Take me through your journey to
and
to
I was
experience
definitely anticipating it. I will be honest, I was a little bit skeptical because I'm a long lover of Disneyland in particular. I'm notably not including Disney World there, although I know it has many millions of lovers around the world. For me, the OG Disneyland is what it's all about. I think it's the most masterfully, creatively manipulative environment ever constructed. So knowing its footprint, knowing how limited the real estate is there, I was skeptical when they announced that they were going to build a land, that it would be worthy of being called a Star Wars land. I couldn't figure out how that real estate was going to work. And to their everlasting credit, I mean, they reclaimed a lot of what was backlot area for them, but they just delivered on the suspension of disbelief on a scale that I just did not anticipate. So I just really, really love that place.
Was it a jaw-dropping first-time experience? Like when you walked in and looked around, what did you see?
Well, first of all, you move straight from Frontierland. For those who've been to Disneyland, you move from Frontierland. I mean, you're already, the minute you walk in the entrance gates of those parks, your every sense is under assault and being manipulated, right? So speaking of the art of the con, the Carnival Con,
exactly,
they're working you from the moment you walk in. But the transition to walk from Frontierland, where you're hearing birds and sort of nature sounds around you, and then begin to hear blips and bleeps from droids and subtle, mechanical effects and just different things that begin to tell you on a base level, you're moving from one frontier to another. That's really beautiful. But then to look at the scale of the construction and the way that not just any other lands within the park, but any sense of the outside world is stripped away and blocked so convincingly that you really believe you have been transported. And then to, not to get too geeky about it, but let's face it, that's why we're here. To stand in front of a full-scale Millennium Falcon is, I mean, nothing will ignite your inner 10 or 12-year-old more than that. It's really a wonderful experience.
Well, let's take it back then. What was the first Star Wars movie you saw, and what was your experience that day or night?
Well, this dates me, but it proudly dates me. In the summer of 1977, Dave, I was 12 years old, and the process for me began one night when I begged my parents, and I didn't even know this was coming. I wasn't tired yet. I begged my parents to let me stay up and watch The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and they let me. And that particular night, in the middle of his monologue, which, I didn't really understand half the jokes, but I just sort of laughed along anyway because I was afraid my parents would make me go to bed. In the middle of one of his monologues, he was suddenly interrupted unexpectedly, certainly where I was concerned. He was suddenly interrupted by smoke and a telltale breathing sound at the back of the theater of his studio audience. And then the cameras turned around, and this guy I'd never seen or heard of, known as Darth Vader, walked down the aisle and through the audience. And basically, it was a paid advertisement in which he told people to see Star Wars. And I'd never heard of Star Wars, but all I knew was I had to see this. I was immediately hooked by whatever this was. And that is exactly why I spent all of the money I had earned up to that point mowing people's lawns in suburban South Tulsa, Oklahoma, to go see Star Wars 11 times over 2 weeks at the Fox Theater in Tulsa. I had saved exactly $30, and the tickets were $250. Throw in some popcorn and a Coke, and I blew all the money I had in the world to see it 11 times. 3 years later, I could only afford to see Empire 9 times in the theater. I've probably seen it another 90 times since then. But that initial experience at the Fox Theater in Tulsa was truly transformative and blew my young mind in all kinds of ways. And literally, were it not for that experience or that first series of experiences, you and I wouldn't be sitting here talking right now. I wouldn't be in Los Angeles. I wouldn't have the career I've had, the life I've had. So I didn't know it at the time, but I certainly knew my young mind was blown. I had never had an experience like that.
What was it that kept you going back 11 times in 14 days is a lot.
Yeah.
I know that, I mean, obviously I know the easy answer is it's a amazing experience. There's so much to see, but were there things that as you went back, you were anticipating more and more?
So great question, and I think the best answer is yeah, of course. I'd never seen anything like it. So I was blown away by it on that level. But I think what really got me, and the reason I kept going back to study, I don't know that I would have framed it in those terms at age 12, but I think this is what I was doing. I was going back to study it because at age 12, my epiphany was I suddenly realized that a guy named George Lucas had gotten a couple hundred people together and somehow managed to craft this convincing world. And to create that kind of experience for millions of people around the world, I didn't completely understand how, and I certainly didn't yet see how I might be able to do something like that myself. But for the first time in what I think was a critical epiphany, I saw that it was possible. So that craftsmanship, that creative endeavor, that process of assembling a village to create, this new world, this new universe, that was just something that I'd never contemplated before. And I'd seen movies, I'd enjoyed all kinds of entertainment at that point, but it was just suddenly that, oh, this is a thing that you could do. This is a career choice, that then propelled me into getting my hands on every copy of Starlog or any other kind of whatever was available at the time, and there wasn't much in the world of behind the scenes. But I just was sort of ignited by that process, and in fact, it literally inspired me to write my first screenplay, which was a terribly adapted version of Star Wars that me and a bunch of kids in my neighborhood decided to attempt as a Super 8 movie. And I say attempt because we ran out of money, our ambitions were far too large, and we ran out of time at the end of the summer and had to go back to school. So it was never finished. But it didn't matter because I had been bitten so incredibly hard by this bug that I didn't know existed prior to walking into that theater for the first time.
Now, did this ignite an interest in more sci-fi or filmmaking in general? I mean,
sci-fi certainly. I already was interested in it, but so definitely it reinforced a love for that genre. But it was more about just the craftsmanship of it all. Yeah. It was more about reading about, wow, so Kenny Baker got down inside that R2-D2, costume, if that's even the way to describe R2-D2, and I don't think it is. Wow. So Richard Edlund, worked on these kinds of effects to create such a convincing representation of space. I just was like, I was so struck by the craftsmanship that I just wanted to learn as much as I could about it. And I wanted to see if I could develop any of those skills of my own. And I wanted to see if I could although again, at this point, like I was so rooted, as we all are as kids, I was so rooted to the place where I was, to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I didn't see any way possible that I could ultimately one day be involved in anything even remotely approaching that kind of career path. But man, it flipped the switch on for me for sure.
I find it interesting with your interest in magic, and I like magic as well. And what I like about magic is I love that it surprises and delights me every time, but I also like to figure out how they did it. And that's what it sounds like. You're taking the magic of Star Wars, you're letting it surprise and delight you, but still going, okay, how do you fit the girl in the wooden box in order to contort her and put knives in as well?
That is exactly right. That's exactly right. You've just done incredible work as my shrink in piecing it together, because that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is a magical experience. I can still watch Star Wars and still appreciate the trick, much like I can appreciate, seeing Once Upon a Time when they were around, God rest their kitschy souls, seeing Siegfried and Roy from 7 feet away on a stage in Vegas make an elephant disappear. And I knew exactly how that trick worked, but it did not change my enchantment one iota. And that's definitely, that was the inspiration point for Star Wars for me.
Do you remember hearing about Empire Strikes Back coming out or seeing the trailer for the first time?
Yeah. I couldn't wait for that. I've always been a trailer lover. I come from a family of advertising and have worked myself as a creative director for ad agency and done a lot of freelance ad work before I started writing, full time professionally. And so I've always loved trailers and the power they have to pack theaters. And so I knew that there was going to be another Star Wars movie, and I couldn't wait to see the trailer for that, and couldn't have been more excited when I did. But yeah, I knew it was coming, and I couldn't wait. Like I said, at that point I could only afford. I think the ticket prices had gone up. I could only afford to see it 9 times. But
inflation.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, but I was super excited about Empire.
And then 3 years later, you're probably 17 or 18. Jedi comes out, which on first blush, my guess would be it does not sit that well with a 17 or 18-year-old, but I'd love to hear what your experience was.
Yeah, I don't want to say I was starting to outgrow Star Wars, because I still loved it passionately. But, at that point I'm driving, I've got my own agency, and I was starting to put together how it might be possible for me to go do those things that I had seen back in 1977. Most notably because the sort of 2-step part of my journey to Hollywood in terms of formative building blocks. Number one was Star Wars in 1977. But then when I was in the summer of my 16th year on this planet, the circus came to Tulsa, and Francis Ford Coppola came to make a movie called The Outsiders in my hometown. Okay. And I got cast in The Outsiders in a small bit part. I have a medium close up and one line. But that experience was critical for me, because it made me realize, after production wrapped and everybody left, I was like, oh, that really cool experience I just had, if I want to have it again, I have to go where the circus is. I have to go to LA. And so what did I want to do? Well, I wanted to go where George Lucas went, right? So that's what directed me toward USC. But again, at that point, by the time Jedi came around, I had my eye on other balls, and so that paired with the Ewoks, I was sort of like, okay, I get it. This is, and I see how it pivots, right? We started bright and shiny, and then we went dark, and now we're kind of coming back into warm and fuzzy and plush toy land, and I get it. But I was a little detached from it. I laugh about it now, in particular through my experiences of getting to know and befriend my all-time great screen hero, Mr. Ford, which we can talk about a little bit later. But Ewoks in particular are fun for me to talk about in that regard, because of a special extraordinary birthday video that my wife made for me when I turned 40, that was like a spoof of a VH1 Behind the Music episode about my life that included, God bless him, interviews with Harrison, in which he explains how I am responsible for the Ewoks. So that's a whole nother story. But yeah, by the time we got to Jedi, I was starting to at least momentarily drift away from the universe, and then I came back with a gusto.
What brought you back?
USC. USC gave me many gifts and continues to this day. I've been a professor there for 17 years now, but being able to just sort of walk those grounds and through USC start meeting people that, had a hand in Star Wars and then being able to, see it again on big screens and pick it apart and analyze it and learn much more about the craft that went into those films. All of that stuff was really great. And then, by the time I had left USC as a student and before I started teaching, I mentioned earlier, I worked in advertising, and I here in LA, in order to pay off the many student loans it took me to go to USC, I wrote a lot of trailers and taglines for movies, so I wrote the tagline for Home Alone, the family comedy without the family, or Home Alone 2, he's up past his bedtime in the city that never sleeps, a lot of that kind of stuff. But when it really started to come full circle for me and reignite my love for Star Wars all over again was when I got hired to write the trailers for the theatrical re-release of Star Wars. So I wrote the line, "See it again for the very first time." And so that really sort of pulled me in a big way back in, because I had to watch all three of the first films again because they were all re-released theatrically, one after another. And so that really just took me back to all of the reasons why I ultimately wound up out here.
Yeah, and I think they were re-released like January, February, March of 1996, like episode 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah,
that's incredible. I love that story because I've worked in on-air promotions for most of my life, and so the idea of writing those copy lines sounds so exciting. Did you, when you were doing the trailers for the re-release? Now I have so many questions for you. One, what was your experience with working with Lucasfilm?
It was really working with Fox. So I didn't get in that process. I didn't get any direct access to Lucasfilm, and I wanted it, man. I wanted it. But Fox was in charge of that particular effort, and their amazing marketing department at the time. So they're the ones who hired me, and they were like, "So you're gonna have to sit and watch all the movies again?" I'm like, "Yeah." And how many times can I watch them? And can I watch them by myself in a big giant theater on the lot? But so I didn't get any direct access to Lucasfilm, unfortunately, in that process.
And then when you saw the updated footage, like the Jabba the Hutt, some of the Cloud City scenes, what was your reaction to that? Because you're one of the very first to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And again, I've been working in Hollywood long enough to know that, we continually eat ourselves. We call it improvement, or we're striving on the positive side to improve things. But I think in that case, I don't know how necessary it was. And I try to avoid being a purist about this stuff, because it is a temporary art form in so many respects. And it constantly shifts and evolves. And especially someone like Lucas, who so beautifully used technology in so many ways to craft those works of art. I understand the impulse to try and improve upon them and to correct mistakes, even if they don't feel like mistakes to anyone else. So I get it. I didn't think it was necessary, and I still don't, but if it were my film, I'd probably feel differently.
Cinema Craptaculous is your podcast destination for all things movies, good and bad, streaming series, good and bad, and pop culture, good, bad, and the ugly. You get a totally different show every week, such as People Also Watched with Adam, Dave, and Tara. They're three industry insiders who always find the hilarity in the big budget feature and the lesser known feature you may have missed. There is, of course, the Expanded Universe. This is your place to geek out. John, Doc, and S'more are your geek experts to talk about what's going on in the world of streaming series, movies, superheroes, pretty much any showbiz geek topic, they're going to talk about it. And, of course, there's the show that started it all, Cinema Craptaculous, with Stephanie, John, and Dave. You don't even need to have seen the movies these guys talk about to have a good time. So what are you waiting for? Go and subscribe to Cinema Craptaculous wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
So you work on the re-releases. Around this time, the news is coming out that the prequel trilogy is coming up. Are you gunning to work on those trailers?
At that point, I was gunning to work on those films. I had also, in part because I had I had stopped advertising. And, in 1998, I got my first television series on the air, which was a science fiction series called Mercy Point, starring Joe Morton on the former UPN network. And it was a, set in the 23rd century space station hospital at the farthest edges of the galaxy, and, human and other species interstellar medicine being served on board. So I remember thinking, okay, I'm getting closer. Now, if I can just get into the Star Wars universe somehow, if I can just get those meetings at Lucasfilm, maybe I'll have a shot at working on one of these prequels in some way. And it never happened. But yeah, at that point, I was really thinking, okay, how can I get into this universe?
And working on Mercy Point, did you work in any like sly Star Wars references, or maybe not so sly Star Wars references?
I mean, I would say lots of homages to Star Wars. I mean, I've just been so influenced by it, and the Star Trek universe as well. But but Star Wars in particular, I wanted from day one to craft those cantina experiences where you just didn't think twice about multiple species occupying the same space. Not only that, but, rolling up their sleeves, as it were, and, literally working hard to save each other's lives. I know that there were moments where I would sit with, Steve Johnson, the brilliant makeup effects artist, and we would have conversations about Star Wars or this kind of creature or that kind of creature, and how can we sort of create our own spin on that experience. So yeah, it definitely influenced every frame of Mercy Point without question.
What is one of your favorite Star Wars memories?
Well, there are several, but I think one of them would be that I was one of the first guests to enter on December 16th of 2015.
Oh.
I lined up with 1,000 other people outside of the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood for a 24-hour marathon of what at that time was all 7 movies. And the marathon began at 1 a.m. And it started with the prequel trilogy. And there were all kinds of special guests throughout the night. Ray Park, who played Darth Maul, was there. Richard Edlund, the Oscar-winning VFX genius, was there. D. Bradley Baker, an extraordinary VO talent from Clone Wars and Rebels, but who I'd also gotten to work with before. And even Billy D. Williams showed up. The immortal Lando Calrissian, and there were raffle prizes, and there were costumes, and there were people alternating between snoring, especially during Phantom Menace, and cheering all around me. It was high geek church, and so that just sort of basking in all of that, all of which led up to the first showing of Force Awakens, was just it was wonderful. Like, just talk about wallowing in it. That was a very memorable experience. It was fragrant. It was a lot of people packed in a theater for way too many hours, but it was fun.
It's why smell-o-vision has not taken off yet, because when it does, people are going to be like, yeah, you know what, that is a sense I do not need in my entertainment viewing experience.
Yeah, a lot of sweaty bodies packed into the El Capitan, but it was fun.
You must have been very pumped to go from Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a very titillating experience to begin with, because it's just like you said, it's high geek church. But now you're launching into something completely new. The ad campaign leading up to it was just fantastic, from the very first black and white still that looked like a 1977 black and white still, to all the trailers and the teasing and Harrison Ford going, "Chewie, we're home."
Mm-hmm.
How did you react when you saw Force Awakens in that moment?
With no shame whatsoever, I got weepy. Now, part of that was because I'd been up for 24 hours, admittedly, but I got weepy. It immediately, again, another full circle moment where, well, here I am in Hollywood in a classic, beautifully restored movie palace, and I'm only here because of Star Wars. or at least I'm largely here because of Star Wars. And here we are again with someone carrying the torch forward for a fresh generation. But, again, lighting that torch off of these classic characters who are so beloved, I got weepy. I did it was one of those sort of out of body experiences where you just become cognizant of how you got somewhere and you become very deeply thankful that you're there. I just was very grateful to be in that theater with that group of sweaty people who were all just so clearly fans like I was. And so whatever you can say, good, bad, or otherwise, about Force Awakens, I got weepy. I got a big lump in my throat.
Oh, that's great. That's beautiful. It's it was really cool to see how that movie brought the energy of what I imagined the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And not imagine how I experienced the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
The top 3 elements. Well, one is just character-rich storytelling. I love those. I love those characters, and I love their flaws and imperfections. I love the character-rich storytelling. I love, on an equal par with that, I love the brilliant and endlessly imaginative use of technology to create new worlds. With one little asterisk. I mean, I would say one of the things that disconnected me from the prequels was the just overly abundant use of CG that did not feel as organic to me and real as the practical effects that had been used in the original films. And I think part of that is just because they were ahead of the curve a little bit. And I'm sensitive to that because my first television series, which I mentioned, Mercy Point, if I'd been able to make Mercy Point even 5 years later than I did, most of what we were struggling to do, you could have done on a laptop, right? Yeah. So I think that they've caught back up with themselves now. Now you can sort of watch the way, computers or technology are used in the new films and in the series, certainly, that once again sort of have recaptured what feels organic, what feels much more real. So, I think that's part of what stuck out for me. But again, the use of technology to create imaginative worlds, and just the use of raw talent. Let's start there. Talent and technology to create these worlds. So that's the second part of it. And I think the third thing that draws me to it is its ability to carry on. There are whole new legions of fans, and I just admire this. Lucas created his own version of a Mona Lisa that it's going to outlive him, by many years. I often say that I'm jealous of, creatively jealous or envious of the power of a 3-minute pop song. The way the Beatles Yesterday is going to outlive Paul McCartney by a few hundred years. I've never done anything, and I'll probably never do anything that will outlive me like that. But Lucas did that. And so long after he's gone, long after you and I and this beautiful podcast are gone, there will be some version of the Star Wars universe, I'm convinced, that will still be connecting with audiences. And so that's those sort of 3 things: a character-rich stories, the way talent and technology were used to create worlds, and the way it's had a lasting impact on pop culture so far, and I believe will continue to do so after you and I have finished talking about it. I think those are the 3 things that really I admire the most about Star Wars.
That's right. It almost sounds like it invokes the idea of it takes a village because of the talent and the technology, the writing of the characters, and the sustainability of the franchise. It all takes lots of hands touching it to move it forward. It's almost like George Lucas's, what do you call that when you're in a mosh pit and they're carrying you across the
body of crowd surfing.
Yeah, crowd surfing. A reference from 1990 that everyone will appreciate today.
I certainly appreciate it. Yes. But, I also love, again, having taught at SC, having been both a student at SC and having taught there for so long, it's now literally etched in Latin what he once, wrote with a finger in wet cement on a sidewalk. Reality ends here. That's one of the other things that I love so much about the Star Wars universe is that ability to just, whether you are watching one of the movies or you're standing in Star Wars land at one of the parks, like you are disconnected at least momentarily from reality, and I love that experience. Again, it's the magic trick.
You and I had a time, and Javier talked of this as well, this time before there was Star Wars, when there was nothing, and then there was Star Wars. But now the students today have grown up so enmeshed in Star Wars for the most part. Are you seeing that a lot reflected in their work? Do you have to kind of disengage that part of their mind to kind of propel them forward?
That's always an interesting aspect. In my experience at USC in particular, USC in great ways and maybe not so great ways is very reflective of Hollywood. And it is a place that helps create original voices for our industry, but it's also a place that feeds our industry directly. And so I think that it runs the gamut. I mean, I will constantly see students in my class to such a refreshing degree who are thinking so far outside of the box, who have such extraordinarily original ideas that they may be trying to push like, Sisyphus up a hill, but that I have such great respect and admiration for as a storyteller. So that excites me, and on a daily, semester by semester basis, I'm constantly blown away by original voices all around me. But I'm also surrounded often by kids who are just like me, who showed up having been inspired by this movie or that movie or a body of work, and who dream of somehow being a part of a franchise or paying their own homage to things that they've seen before. I mean, so much of art is remixing, even before that term existed.
Okay, now I want to talk to you about Harrison Ford, because as a kid, even knowing that I know someone who's friends with Harrison Ford, I'd be like next to myself. How did that come about? And do you mind talking about it?
Yeah, no, I don't, because he's such an important person in my life. I first got to meet him through my late great father-in-law, Mace Neufeld, who we just lost a little over a year ago, who was one of the most important men in my life, but who was a beloved movie producer, who produced The Omen and The Hunt for Red October and Patriot Games and Sum of All Fears and $1 billion worth of movies at the box office. But Mace knew and became very close with Harrison because of the Tom Clancy, the Jack Ryan movies, and which of course, it's not enough that Harrison was one icon as Han Solo and then a second icon as Indiana Jones, but he was also Jack Ryan.
All in the same year.
Yeah, he was also Jack Ryan for quite a while. So that's how I first, and then he and Mace both shared a birthday. So I first got to know Harrison through Mace, and then I first got to work with Harrison when he and the director Philip Noyce were attached to one of the Clancy sequels, The Sum of All Fears. Ultimately, that's the one that Harrison exited and Philip exited, and it wound up being a Ben Affleck film. But when they were both still attached, I worked directly with Philip to conceive of a new story and then screenplay. And I wound up working directly with Harrison for the first time in that process and got to know him a little bit more personally there. But then also Harrison, when my father-in-law received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Harrison and I gave speeches, and Harrison came to my wedding, and Harrison took one of my kids flying. Like we've gotten to know each other over time.
Yeah.
And I am constantly humbled by that experience, because it is the literal personification of a full circle moment for me to have been that kid in that Fox theater in 1977, seeing Star Wars 11 times, falling in love. I mean, in love with Harrison. My wife and I always joke that like our celebrity free pass, you know how you have like with your spouse, your free pass of any celebrity you could sleep with. We joke that like we would both sleep with Harrison. Like he was so heroic to me as a kid, that to then get to meet him, work with him, know him, he's just such for someone who lives on a different planet from most of the rest of the world, is such a remarkably grounded, wonderful, warm, curmudgeonly, amazing person. And I just every time I'm with him, it's an interesting little inner dialogue that goes on, because there's part of me that's like, just be cool, man, be cool. Don't geek out. Don't blow this. Don't show your cards. Don't collapse to your knees and sob openly. Just don't do. But then the other side of me can't help but recognize, especially having worked in Hollywood as long as I have, and I've been around a lot of stars, not all of whom are necessarily, there is some truth to be careful meeting your heroes. He is such a amazingly cool and real person that without even intending to, I'm sure he has a natural way of diffusing that inner angst within me, because I just recognize as a human being, oh, he's just a cool guy. And so I let go of that stuff pretty quickly. I mean, the scotch usually helps. But
Scotch always helps.
Yeah, scotch always helps. In addition to
that's the tagline for scotch.
Yeah, in addition to whatever other substances might be present. But he's a wonderful person.
Was there a moment where you did lose your where the geek won out? It was like, call me kid.
No, no, but the moment, and he wasn't even there to witness it, but he was a direct participant in it. I mentioned it earlier. My wife had this amazing movie made for my 40th birthday, and it was it was this VH1 Behind the Music thing. And there's I'm very open about my have a great sense of humor about my hair loss. Right. I used to be a long hair, Dave. And those days are far behind me, obviously, especially for anybody who might be watching this Zoom. But Harrison, I had made those jokes around him as well. And so he played a role in this Behind the Music film, which is, again, it's a mockumentary, but he goes on at great length. And my dear friend, Dave Comtois, who's a brilliant editor, spent weeks and weeks cutting all this together. But Harrison spent a significant chunk of this interview recalling the fictional time in which I was an aspiring actor, and that Lucas, right prior to Jedi, was this close to casting me as Chewbacca's brother, Chewbacca. And so I went through all of the costume fittings and makeup tests and all of that. And of course, there's images to go along with all of this. But Lucas privately became concerned that my male pattern baldness that was not going to work for a character, like a Wookiee who has to be covered in hair. And they tried, affixing all sorts of costume hair to my bald head, and it wasn't working. And it's just so funny to hear Harrison tell this story as if it's true. And then ultimately, in a moment of crisis, George came to Harrison and the rest of the cast for advice on what to do about all of this. And that's when they all arrived at, well, what if you made the Wookiees short and you create these characters called Ewoks, and that way you can protect Trey's feelings, and you can go to him and say, we've decided to go another way, instead of tall, we're going to go short, and that way it won't be about the hair, and my feelings won't be hurt. And there's this great moment where Harrison, in a way that only Harrison can, looks right into the camera and says, so if you think about it, It's because of Trey that we've got those goddamn Wookiees. I mean, the Ewoks. It's because of Trey we've got the Ewoks. And it's just a fantastic moment. So in that moment, like my mind was blown that like here's my hero who is a full and active and willing participant in this spoof of my life. You know? Truly incredible.
That does sound incredible. It's like you said, the full circle experience is an incredible experience.
Yeah. No question.
My final question.
Okay.
You go to Skywalker Ranch, and there at the gates, George Lucas greets you. What do you say to him?
Thank you. I don't mean to be too schmaltzy, but again, Star Wars ignited my desire to be a storyteller. It ignited my dream of working in the entertainment business. It is responsible for me being at USC as both a student and a professor because I wanted to go where George went. It has helped me build a career. It has helped me work with and play with some of my heroes. It continues to bring me joy, either on the big screen, the small screen, or standing in the middle of Star Wars land, not to mention the privilege that I have of working with students every semester, standing literally in the house that George built at the School of Cinematic Arts at USC. So all of those combined with the treasured memories I have of sitting on a family room couch with my kids playing Lego Star Wars as a video game. All of those experiences, the sum total of those experiences, I would have nothing to express to George Lucas at the gates of Skywalker Ranch beyond my gratitude, my just absolute humble and genuine gratitude for creating a universe that for me was an absolute gift and remains a gift to this day.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. George is a close friend of mine, so I'm going to play that for us.
Okay, please do. Thank you.
No,
because I've had the opportunity to shake his hand twice, but I didn't have the time to say any of that stuff. So
it's hard in the moment to say those things. Trey, thank you so much. You've inspired me. I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously. You've inspired me to appreciate the magic and the work behind the magic, and I appreciate your time.
It's a privilege and a pleasure and an absolute hoot to be able to talk about this universe with somebody who clearly loves it as much as I do. So thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. And what are you working on now that you might want people to know about, or what's upcoming? And where can they find you on the Twitters or the Instas?
Right now, I'm working on a pilot for Netflix, which I would love to tell you all about, but I'm not allowed to. It's super cool. So I'm working on that and a few other things in the development hopper. When I can speak more about that, I most certainly will. But in the meantime, yes, you can always connect with me on social media. It's at Trey Callaway, TreyCallaway. So you can find me on pretty much every platform out there under that moniker. So I will look forward to crossing paths with you elsewhere, but thank you again for the opportunity to chat about our mutually favorite universe. And
yes,
and wouldn't I feel remiss if I didn't finish this by saying, may the force be with you, Dave.
May the force be with you. I don't know. Is there a rejoinder to that? The force will be with you always.
And always.
Thank you, Trey.
Thank you, my friend.
So that's what Star Wars means to Trey Callaway. Have you been to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland? Are you someone who watched their first Star Wars movie and watched it over and over again to study it? Let us know and get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Next week, I welcome Thunder Levin. Not only does he have one of the great ever given names, but he also wrote the hit sci-fi original movies Sharknado 1, 2, 3 and Sharknado The Fourth Awakens, as well as a ton of other stuff. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you're liking the show, please give us a 5-star rating and review. And remember, the Force will be with you. Always. Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.